I'm AnaStacia from Worksafe.
I'm Alyssa Moore from Legal Services for Prisoners with Children.
Our presentation is Behind the Walls, Addressing OSH Disparities in the Carceral System. Okay. Our agenda for our 15-minute presentation will be very brief, but we're going to talk about the OSH disparities, talk about the intersection of prison labor and climate change, and then the real-world implications for incarcerated workers. Okay. So why we're here today. As pretty much everybody in this room probably knows, there was an indoor heat standard for California employees that passed in July, but the Corrections Department jails and juvenile halls were taken out. So we have been gently encouraging CalOSHA to be sure that we get that standard for corrections only in place, hopefully before the next heat wave. And the point of this presentation is to illustrate just how are the conditions that prison workers are working in when it comes to indoor heat exposure, and why it's imperative that we address this issue. We have about 40,000 prison workers in our prison industrial authority. That's the employer in the prison that CalOSHA covers. And we have about 148 jails and prisons altogether. And these workers, these prison workers, for lack of a better term right now, who work in these jails and prisons have experienced at least 600 workplace injuries. This number was over the course of 4 years. But this is the type of data we have about the injuries that these workers are facing on the inside. And this number is probably, as most statistics, they're undercounted. They're probably not fully reflective of all the injuries that are happening in this workspace. So some of the prison workplaces, and I know we're all liberal Californians and probably understand that prisons are workers, but I just wanted to really ground it for us. It's not just that they're working to keep the upkeep of the building. You might say, okay, well, they're washing walls or they're mopping a floor, big whoop, but they're working at the same places that we work, that millions of Americans, Californians work, and that we shop from, that we engage with on a, if you're me, DoorDash hourly basis. And so these are just some of the places that they're working at. And prison itself is the workplace, of course, for incarcerated people, but also for the prison staff, the guards, the nurses, the trades union people who work there, like people who do HVAC or other trade things going on in the prisons. These are all people who are subject to indoor heat exposure at these prisons who need this standard. This is a table that just focuses on California county jails. However, what the chart reflects is how old the county jails are. But we also have some data on the prisons as well. Okay, well, y'all have the slides, okay?
Maybe, where should you be pointing?
Yeah. Oh.
If you point to the back of the room, it'll be easier.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, there you
go. Okay, well, y'all got the slides. It's not a good morning. No, it's a great morning. Everything's amazing. Okay.
There you go. You're doing great, AnaStacia. Don't worry, you're doing great.
We have the slides. There's a chart on slide 8. And that chart shows you the oldest county jail, or rather the newest county jail in California. So when we talk about the indoor heat exposure and the temperatures that are rising, you have to think about those temperatures rising in a building that was built in the early 90s and 1800s. There's no ventilation. They're made of stone. They're made of brick. They're made during a time when California was never getting this hot. They did not anticipate needing ventilation that you might have needed in Texas or something. And it just makes the situation even more dire. For quick reference, I think the newest prison in California was made in 2013, and that was at a federal decree. Aside from that, the newest prison is from 1997. The oldest prison was made in 1852 and is still being used. Next slide, 9. So the heat and its impact on workplace injuries. I think I've said this to you all before. There's a study that says that not just heat illness injuries that go up when it's hot, but all workplace injuries go up when it's hot. People are hot, like I'm hot now, out of breath, and they just stop. They stop thinking right? And so other incidents and accidents happen when the heat goes up. So that 600 number is likely reflective of those type of incidents as well.
So my name is Alyssa Moore. I've spoke before you guys before. As as you guys know, I'm formerly incarcerated, so I'm uniquely suited, as the expert to speak to you about working conditions on the inside. One thing that I would like people to take into consideration is that the working conditions inside are extreme compared to what an individual would consider normal out here. The exposure to chemicals is unheard of. It's direct exposure, oftentimes without any protective equipment, even though that is required by OSHA standard. It's not routinely used inside the California state prison system. We're told that it's too costly to always issue us gloves and protective equipment. So please keep that in mind. And in light of the horrendous fires in Southern California, please know that these individuals that are fighting these fires are on the front lines before any civilian. And when you're facing a 20-foot wall of fire, if you decide to rescind that decision, it becomes no longer a choice, because you will be penalized for that and sent back to the general population in a prison. You will no longer be in the camp. So a lot of these individuals that are working in these substandard conditions are also at a significant risk to their own lives and those around them. Please just keep that in mind. So also the health risks and mortality for prison workers. Incarcerated individuals working outdoors are particularly vulnerable to heat stress, dehydration, heat stroke, and a 2024 study by MIT researchers found that more than 98% of the U.S. prisons experienced at least 10 summer days hotter than any previous summer average, with facilities in the Southwest facing far more extreme heat. The study also noted that many prisons lack comprehensive climate control, exacerbating the risks of those working outside. And then in addition to that, there's also a report called The Hidden Hazards by Ella Baker Center that I would like everybody to reference if they choose to do so. It claims that there are 18 prisons in the state that are at an elevated risk, and it's substantiated by data, obviously. So we just would like everyone to know, to put that in perspective. In 1997, when I started serving my time in Chowchilla, California, it was a whopping 96 degrees inside the cell, and that, can be considered high for some people, but to put it in perspective, last year when Adrian Boulware died of heat effects in California Department of Corrections in Chowchilla, it was 114 degrees.
So our next slide is a quote.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. It was Sunday morning. Everyone had found out that Adrian had passed away, and they were all distraught about the passing. But then they were also all locked down, and they were all calling out to us. And they were just getting a hold of us advocates saying, we're locked down, and the vents are pumping hot air, and we can't breathe. And they were saying, we can't breathe. And then women were throwing up and having headaches and leg pains. And this quote is from Lisa Namora. It's from a news network interview on 7/2022/24. But she's also an advocate in this work, and we receive calls on a routine basis from incarcerated people. And this is the state that the prison was in, particularly when Adrian succumbed to the effects of, heat. And then, obviously it's just a very unhealthy situation for incarcerated people when you're talking about the effects that kind of loss can have on them. The real world implications for incarcerated workers. Most of the individuals that are incarcerated, that are working under these conditions, that are serving significant amounts of time, are suffering from some type of upper respiratory condition that is exacerbated by the working conditions inside the prison when it comes to heat. Right now, inside of CDCR, they have substandard HVAC systems. They're still operating off the swamp cooler system, which, as you guys know, is not meant to cool anything more than 10 degrees variant, right? And it's outdated at this point. It needs to be replaced, but not only that, these systems are not routinely maintenance, so they're infested with things like mold and black mold and even worse. And when those systems are turned on for individuals to receive some type of reprieve, that those contaminants are just blown throughout the entire system, exacerbating those upper respiratory conditions, not just for workers, but for everyone. So, but particularly with respect to the workers, oftentimes we are doing laborious work, we're breathing heavy and intaking those types of contaminants while doing that work, essentially making it far more dangerous for a worker that is exerting themselves than just a regular individual that is incarcerated. But all the same, very concerning, considering that these same individuals will be as taxpayers, our complete financial responsibility once they're paroled. This concludes our presentation.
This concludes our presentation, you guys. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for the technical difficulties. Next time when we bother you all with the 15-minute presentation, we'll have it down pat now. But takeaway is that we need heat protections for workers on the inside, and that's all. Thank you.
Are there any prisons that have any kind of air conditioning in them that workers can get to and that inmates can get to? I mean, it's harsh in California, just about wherever you're at.
No, there are cooling areas for officers, where the officers work and where administration is. Those areas are air conditioned with up-to-date HVAC systems. But the officers are not always able to access that, right? Because they work in the units with us. Oftentimes they're searching rooms. And like she mentions, the tradespeople as well that do not have access to any type of reprieve or cooling during that. Even the ice machines that are, mandated by the state themselves to be issued to individuals are often broken down. As they were told, all 5 ice machines were broken on the day Adrian died. But they have yet to produce a work order for that. Oftentimes, even if there is listed that there is a cooling areas for staff, the staff cannot access them, being, hypothetically miles away from the administration building. And it's just not feasible to think that a correctional officer that is meant to, maintain safety and security of the institution could leave a post to get reprieve. So no.
Thank you.
And yeah, and in addition, the incarcerated individuals have no right to reprieve whatsoever.
But what are the plans, if any, to address some of these issues that you guys have placed on the table here?
Thus far, CDCR has presented no tangible plan for this. We know that there are monies issued in the budget every year to bring the department up to standard, but how this money is being used and where it is being used is not clearly defined. We're looking into that now. Our organization is with legislation, but it's an arduous process finding those answers. So at this point, Legal Services for Prisoners with Children is looking to address this on a legislative ballot.
We've also been working with, trying to work with the governor's office as well as CDCR, the guards union, trying to bring everybody to the table so that we can work out some of these like correction specific situations that don't occur in a regular workplace. But we are scared that bringing a lot of people to the table, or the interest at the table, will very much want a standard that is almost not effective in order to try to accommodate, or their version of accommodate the situation. So we are scared about that. And we're hoping that what we get from Cal OSHA is a standard that's similar to the one we have right now for indoor workplaces in terms of temperature and protections, but that accommodates or accounts for the guards they're always having to be a guard there, and guards having to leave and watch the prisoners and things of that nature, if that answers your question. Yeah,
and when she mentioned for the guards to have to leave and to gain some type of reprieve, it's not a feasible option. In fact, they would be, not actually doing their job if they were not supervising the individuals. So they in essence cannot leave until they are relieved. And that is CDCR policy. They must be relieved by another staff, which is not always available because there are very low staff available for these positions.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. The first is, one of your slides indicated 600 injuries, I guess, over the 4 years. Were all of those heat related? injuries?
No,
No, that's
Okay.
just a,
they were just general workplace injuries, kind of
Okay.
just grounding the OSH disparity issue in the prison.
Okay,
But they
great.
weren't all-
Thank you. And then the other question I had was, it sounds like you're requesting or looking for a separate heat illness standard for the prison system. Why not just get rid of the exception from the existing?
well,
Well,
ideally, ideally, that would be how it would go, but with the exemption being an issue in the first place, we don't believe that it will fly. And we are looking to get some type of standard at all.
Okay.
Because the board obviously tried very hard to pass an across-the-board standard, and was unsuccessful. And I mean, who are we to think that we could try the same thing without as much experience and knowledge as you guys have and be successful? So at this point, we're just trying to get some type of reprieve for the people on the inside.
I think that's what the picture from at the beginning in the introduction was to remind us of that meeting when we were trying to work on that July standard for the indoor heat standard. We were all notified last minute that corrections were being pulled, and it was a high level decision that was made. And so we were told at that time that we would get the resolution would be a correction specific standard. And so I don't think we have room or much room to argue against that decision maker. And so we're just trying to be sure that the standard we get is strong.
I don't have a question so much as just simply thank you. This was a very illustrative presentation, and I learned several points going forward. So I am very, very glad that you came.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, yes, thank you. And we're also available if you guys have any further questions. Our emails are on the presentation, or if anybody listening does, because we're looking to engage everyone that, cares about this issue and believes that, people that are incarcerated are, the same as you or I and running at the same body temperature. And so therefore should receive, same or similar protections.
Even if you don't care about them, it's the guards and the staff also need protections too.
If I have a couple of questions I want to ask you. They're more foundational though, and it's kind of getting back to more square one. You have one slide here that shows 9 different brands: Kroger's, Whole Food, Walmart, and I think the point that you were making was this is where those folks are. This is where the people that you essentially are representing work. Do I have that right?
No, not quite.
Okay,
For one, Worksafe and LSPC, we're not representing anybody in the legal capacity.
sure.
Um,
No, I
but-
understand. I recognize that.
Okay,
Yeah, no,
just
I
be
mean
clear.
those for whom you're advocating.
Yes. And no, so Alyssa can probably give more insight, but it's not that they work at those locations, but that they work for those companies on the inside.
Yeah, so through the Prison Industry Authority and through different type of job opportunity in the workplace for incarcerated workers, there are several different types of contracts through very well-known companies that we actually manufacture parts and supplies and do things of the such, like for instance, anybody that's on Medicare, CCWF not CCWF, but VSPW, which is now VSP, has one of the largest manufacturing places for glasses in the state. And they routinely, do thousands of pairs of glasses. So what that picture is meant to represent is that, you may be patronizing a business that is essentially using labor that is extracted under very unsafe conditions, and often with regard to the California firefighters, no choice at the last moment.
All right, so just to continue what along my line here. So they're working for these companies and others, of course,
Mhm.
but they're working inside the jails and
Yes.
inside the prisons.
Yes.
Okay.
Some of the incarcerated people, yes.
Okay. So the workers we're talking about are conducting the work that they are employed to do while working in the conditions that you've described.
Mhm.
Is that
Yes,
right?
yes,
Okay, got it.
yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. I wanted to make sure that we're talking about, it's a jurisdictional question for us, right?
Yes.
Because we can't just say it's hot in the prison, so change the temperature.
Yeah.
It needs to be a work environment, so
Yeah.
it is, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And also to clarify too, the trades people for all of the different trades unions that are inside the prison are often tasked with working inside of the housing units themselves, even incarcerated workers. If I was an incarcerated worker assisting a disabled individual, my job assignment would oftentimes require me to work inside of the housing unit where individuals are housed. As with electricians, HVAC workers, plumbers, guards, the lot. So that is essentially their workplace.
All right, so if there are conditions on the inside, does the employer who's employing these people through a contract with CDCR, I'm sure, do they have any control over the environment, or is that, or is it CDCR who has control over the environment?
Yes, CDCR maintains like control over, the prison, the environment thereof, where the work is done, and so forth.
All right, so how would an employer, let's call it Kroger, because just they're the first brand I saw here, how would they be responsible for maintaining correct working conditions in a prison where they don't have control over the conditions?
I wouldn't say that they are responsible at all. I think that responsibility lies with the California Department of Corrections because they are ultimately responsible for the safety and welfare of the people that they incarcerate and employ.
And if I could, I think I get what you're getting at. I'm an
Yeah.
attorney by trade. I get what you're getting at, and you could ask the question if you want, or write it for me, and I can get back to you with the
Yeah.
supplemental brief.
No.
Because it's more of a legal issue. I
Yeah,
get what you're
well,
getting at.
it's a tricky issue because we're asking CDCR to regulate a work environment when they're not the employer.
Well,
Now,
okay,
maybe
no.
they might be, and this is something to think about, is I'm just posing this as, I don't have an opinion about this. I'm just identifying the issue that maybe they are responsible by virtue of a contract that they have with an outside provider. That could very well be the case. I don't know the answer, but I do identify that as a somewhat tricky issue in this case.
The Prison Industrial Authority work in particular is definitely covered and regulated under OSHA's jurisdiction, and that's work happening within the prison.
Right.
So we can definitely kind of bifurcate the types of work and then get a jurisdictional analysis going on for you all.
Yeah, I think it would be I'm just remarking that it strikes me as something to think about.
Yeah, but definitely there is at least an aspect of prison work that is regulated under OSHA's jurisdiction.
Let's add real quick too that not only are the CalPI workers and the workers that are, contracted through other companies on the outside, the California Department of Correction also maintains a significant amount of individuals that are incarcerated that are working for the prison, for CDCR, doing routine tasks that are needed to keep the prison running, where you have your kitchen workers and your yard crew workers and your laundry workers, things like that. So I just wanted to make sure that they're brought into the conversation as well.
Good morning. I'm Ann Katten from California Rural Legal Assistance Foundation, and I joined Worksafe and LSPC and others in calling for rapid development and enactment of an indoor heat illness prevention standard for incarcerated workers and Department of Correction employees. And I very much thank them for their very informative and compelling presentation. These workers urgently need heat illness protections afforded other workers. Thank you.
Cassie Helaski. Just very briefly, first of all, either indoor heat is a hazard or it's not. And if it is, everyone should be covered. And I know you all made your efforts to try to make that happen, but I also remember at that meeting and subsequent meetings where it was actually passed that, and I may be wrong, but I thought the direction from the board was for the division to come up with a regulation that was specific to the correctional facilities. And I may be wrong about that, but that was my recollection. Secondly, as a point of clarification, Mr. Alioto's question about jurisdiction, to me, it seems that, and I may be wrong, AnaStacia, but I took the presentation of bringing up all those companies was just to point out that there's product that comes out of the correctional facilities that serves large organizations that we may not be aware of. And for example, in college, I worked in an auto parts factory, making auto parts for the big three in Michigan. That didn't mean I worked for the big three. I worked for the auto parts factory, and then they sold that product to the big three to put in their automobiles. And so in the same vein, it seems to me that the prisoners are having contracts with these Krogers and McDonald's and such to create product. VSP was one of the examples, glasses, to create product to sell to those companies. And as such, they maintain their jurisdiction that they are the employers of those prison workers creating this product to then sell to these companies. So I don't know if that helps clarify and if I'm right about that with WorkSafe, but that's the way I took it.
Hello, good morning, board. My name is Jeronimo Aguilar. I serve as a policy analyst with Legal Services for Prisoners with Children, also a community organizer with All of Us or None Sacramento. And just want to thank my colleagues for this powerful presentation and just underline the urgency when we talk about this issue. Every time we advocate on this issue, we make sure that we uplift, Adrian Boulware and the life that was lost, right? And when we think about life being lost, especially that's preventable, I think that we as a state, as the citizens, advocates, just folks that, believe in humanity, right? We have a responsibility to make sure that we're really looking at this issue deeply. Another summer is coming. We know all the folks that are suffering right now, and our prayers are with those in LA and the incarcerated individuals as well that are being affected by these natural disasters and tragedies that happen. And yeah, another summer is going to be upon us before we know it, right? And the extreme heat that individuals have to deal with. I just want to underline some of the points around the industries that exist within the prison system that continue to operate no matter what the environment and the climate is, no matter what the climate is, the heat, the temperatures, and so on and so forth. The prison doesn't stop running, right? And so when we talk about laundry, kitchen workers, all these different aspects of the prison system, they have to continue the way CDCR sees it. They have to continue working. They have to continue providing service, production, and all these things in order to keep the prison going. And so I think that, again, we have a responsibility if we know that that's what the reality is for individuals inside, that no matter what the environment, no matter what the climate is, they're going to have to continue working and they're going to have to continue putting their lives on the line. And even folks just in the housing units, I know this is not the jurisdiction of OSHA, but if we're talking about 115 to 120 degrees in the cells, you could imagine for workers, the environment that they're having to work through, right? Especially when you're dealing with high-powered machinery and so on and so forth. So, I just really challenge us all the same way that we would say, man, this Amazon worker or this person working in a warehouse, how could we got to protect these folks, right? They can't be working in these type of conditions. For us not to look at incarcerated people as any less than, right? They're human beings, they're brothers, sisters, sons, cousins, a lot of loved ones that I still have inside that I just want to make sure that we really take to heart this issue. So thank you for your time.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning. Hi, my name is Leonard Brown, and I am with WorkSafe. So I'm speaking from my personal experience from heat in institutions. I did 32 years, not something I'm proud of, but here I am, I'm grateful. So I was at San Quentin during the height of COVID. San Quentin, by it being such an old institution, the ventilation there is like, when it gets hot, the building heats up, and then when we had COVID, they couldn't exactly turn the fans on because that would just exacerbate COVID, spread it quicker. So, those housing units are 5 tiers. I was up on the 4th tier, so the heat was just, and to add to that, because, the institution, they have to keep running. And so I was put, along with many of us, because individuals getting sick and they had to, get workers in the kitchen, I was put into the dining hall. So I had to work where the dining hall is already warm from the ovens and the other steam kettles and stuff like this. So the ventilation is, it's just no air circulation, no air circulation. And then a few years back, I was in Ironwood. Ironwood is, it got two temperatures, hot and then extremely hot. And, the buildings, they have swamp coolers, but swamp coolers, anybody know anything about swamp coolers, all it does is just pull the air from the outside in the inside. And when those concrete walls heat up in the evening, those walls would get so hot, what we would do, we would wet a blanket. And that's how you keep cool. You wet the blanket and you hang the blanket up so the blanket would absorb the heat. And you run your fan. So that's how we would keep cool. That's how hot the walls would get. The prisons, they do have their heat alert thing, first stage heat alert, second stage heat alert. But there's more that can be done. There's more. When people on medication, they have to go back in the inside when the temperatures reach 90 degrees outside. But there's just a lot that I know could be done. I know it would cost to switch from swamp coolers to something more conventional. I don't know, many of you remember back in the 90s, there were multiple deaths at Vacaville due to heat, due to heat. And right now today, Vacaville still have those outside thing where the heat is pumped in. The air is pumped into them because it's just those buildings that, they heat up. Well, the whole purpose there is to, I would say, bring, a heat standard, the heat standard up to date. We have the technology, we can do better. The technology is there. And it's just a matter of just finding the balance and with budgets and stuff like that. But it's just, the thing is just it's just really not words, it's just really action.
First of which is Tenisha Katten with Legal Services for Prisoners with Children. Ms. Katten, if you would like to address the board, please make your comments now.
Hello,
Go ahead.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I just wanted to address the critical issues of the heat illness prevention in California's correctional facilities. Under California's labor code, incarcerated workers are considered employees and are entitled to the same workplace protections as any other worker. But too many of these workers are exposed to dangerous heat without necessary safeguards in place. Where California Correctional Department employs over 40,000 incarcerated individuals, many of those that work in facilities with no air conditioning and inadequate ventilation and minimal shade. The risk of the heat-related illness and exhaustion, heat stroke, it's real. It's a risk that many of these workers are forced to take every day. Imagine being tasked with manual labor in a warehouse that's stiffly hot. There's no escape from the heat, there's no airflow, there's no relief, and your body is pushing beyond its limits. If you show signs of distress, you could risk health issues, but potential punishment for not meeting your quotas. This isn't just a theoretical issue, it's happening every day, and these workers are responsible, their responsibility is our responsibility. And it's unacceptable that they remain without these basic protections. As the chair, Mr. Alyssa, mentioned, don't just give lip service. Please consider the humanity of this issue. The world in California is only getting warmer, and I urge you to take action. Incarcerated workers deserve the same protections from heat illness as any other employee in California. And it's not a legal obligation, it's really a moral one. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for your comments. Mr. Wrench?
We have our next commenter is Noe from All of You Are or None.
Hi, everyone. Renee, Deleon with the Southern California Coalition for Occupational Safety and Health. Our organization is founded on the principle that workplace deaths, injuries, and illnesses are preventable. I just wanted to thank Worksafe and Legal Services for Prisoners with Children today for providing a very informative and essential presentation to the board today, especially addressing the intersection of climate change and exposure to high heat. Someone had mentioned previously that this summer is coming and it will be hotter. It will be hotter than last summer. And from what I took away from this presentation is that there is a whole group of California workers that are excluded from high heat protections in indoor workplaces. And that's not right. These workers are covered by California Labor Code, and SoCal COSH will continue to ask this board to prioritize and agendize an indoor heat standard for incarcerated workers in California's prison system. And we hope that the board chooses to do the right thing and pass that immediately and as soon as possible. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and members. Really appreciate you taking the time. My name is Keely O'Brien, and I'm with Western Center on Law and Poverty. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak regarding the heat illness prevention in indoor places of employment standard for our carceral system. Incarcerated workers deserve the same protections as all other workers in California. As some of the other speakers have mentioned, it's a matter of dignity, respect, and morality. These are some of the most vulnerable workers in our entire state, and they deserve the dignity and the respect of basic workplace protections. So I strongly urge the division to draft a corrections-specific indoor heat standard. Thank you so much.